So Naomi, my boss told me this week that he's getting really into Buddhism. He's like
Okay.
planning in a couple of months to go to Vietnam. And he's like, I'm really getting into like Buddhist culture and I want to
Okay.
visit some of the temples that are there. It's such an interesting part of their history. Except he doesn't actually say Buddhism. He thinks it's called Buddhism. At least I'm pretty sure he's talking about Buddhism.
No. He
But yeah,
calls it Buddhism?
I've been hearing a lot about Buddhism at work recently,
What if
and
he's
it
just
has brought
talking
joy to
about
my heart.
prostitutes in Las Vegas and that's the temple is Las Vegas as a
That's
whole?
a really good point. I feel there's a joke here about the legendary figure of Buddha, but I'm not smart enough to make it.
I think you should try harder next time.
Yeah, and here's where we put the intro sting to the episode. I'm
Okay. I'm gonna keep this entirely in.
Date these guys. Why don't you hate these
Song.
guys?
Not even the theme song.
Yeah, I even know the theme song. Welcome back to Why Won't Date These Guys, a podcast where Joel has to do the intro because Naomi doesn't want to edit things. She's like, it's on Zoom. We're keeping it all in. It's too difficult to try to edit around it. I'm Joel Guy.
I'm Naomi Guy, and you're
This is
listening to Why Won't Date These Guys.
I just
No, I'm
said
gonna
that.
say it over again. I'm gonna say it over again because you know what? You took that away from me, so I'm gonna take it away from you. Okay, so screw you. Welcome back to
Sex. Dating, relationships. That's it. That's the intro. Naomi, what are we drinking this week?
I'm drinking a LaCroix key lime LaCroix because I'm basic, and that's the only thing I keep in my fridge other than alcoholic beverages and food.
That sounds pretty sophisticated.
Thank you. Joel, what are you drinking?
I'm drinking an Aloha made honeydew melon nectar, and I had a couple of sips of it before we started recording, and it tastes somewhat like honeydew. I'm not going to pretend honeydew is like a crazy amount of flavor, but then I look and the ingredients are water, sugar, and then apple and pear juice, so I don't feel like I'm getting my money's worth.
That's very fair.
I feel cheated by Aloha made. Also, I bought it from an international market, so the fact they were like, let's import this international beverage made in Hawaii.
Yeah, I can't. That's not internet. Okay, I was thinking about that. I was like, "Where is Hawaii?" And then I had a brain fart there for a minute.
We're not a geography podcast. This is true.
That's very fair.
Naomi, before we get started, I just want to remind our listeners that this is a podcast, and we do have a Patreon, and there's special content on that Patreon. We'd love if our listeners could throw some money at us. We promise we're not trying to get rich and famous off of this. I don't think we could, even if we did try. The money we are currently collecting is going to support various trans charities and organizations doing good work for the trans community. So in exchange for you throwing some money our way, we will provide you with early access to episodes. We will provide you to our special Date These Guys Phoenix area date locations map, which I update every once in a while with cool restaurants, bars, coffee shops, etc. And then some polls as well. And you can influence kind of the outcome of our podcast. We also sent everyone a holiday card last year. And you could be a member of the community that gets a Joel designed holiday card. Last year, it was quite phenomenal. This year, it will, I'll put some work in. But yes, please join our Patreon. Again, we're not greedy. We just want to be able to say that we're successful, whether or not we're actually influential and famous. Anything to add?
Joel, I think that's a great introduction to our introduction, which I'm going to move into another introduction. We're going to have 3 introductions in this episode. So, as Joel mentioned, this podcast, we talk about sex, dating, relationships. But in this episode, we're going to talk about how to not die alone. Literally, we're talking about the book How to Not Die Alone by Logan.
Is this like how to hire people to like stand around your deathbed and say nice things about you?
No, it's called How to Not Die Alone, the surprising science that will help you find love by Logan Ury.
Fair enough.
I'm still trying to figure out. I'm still trying to figure out if this author what like sexual orientation they are. Like, I'm just trying to figure all of this out because I have no idea. It could be a man, a woman, it could be a gender neutral individual. Like, I'm just still trying to figure it out, and I'm like, I don't even know.
So none of the
Like,
book actually made an impact on you. You're just
you know
like
how
the title of the book intrigued me, and then I thought maybe the name of the author is the most intriguing part.
no, what I'm trying to say is that Joel threw this book at me and I'm still trying to figure out, because when I read books I like to read them in like voices, you know what I mean? So like if it was like a male author, I'd be like How to Not Die Alone by Logan Ury. But if it was a female, I'd be like How to Not Die Alone. But if it was a gender neutral individual, it would be like something in between.
Please, no, give that. Don't leave us all waiting. What is your gender neutral person?
My gender neutral person is just a regular octave, like the normal voice octave.
The normal voice octave.
I'm cutting all of this out.
You're cutting all of this out.
So today we're talking about How to Not Die Alone, the surprising science that will help you find love by Logan Ury, like I've mentioned 3 times now. So Joel, I'm going to ask you a series of questions because Logan likes to, put some questions out there, get some answers and responses back, even though this is a book. So they're questions that they want you to start thinking about before they even start chapter 1. So in the introduction, I'm going to ask you a question. Do you think
before we get into this, Naomi,
Yeah.
I don't want to step on your toes, but
Yeah.
I have to ask, is this a book you would recommend to people?
Okay. So that's
Oh,
a hard
boy.
question. That's a hard question to answer. So I appreciate the book because it takes you from like, okay, you're single, you're lonely, you're annoyed, or like you're single and you're happy being single, but you like want a companion in your life, into like how to break up with people, how to like not ghost people, how to be an adult in a relationship, how to like get married, how to sort out finances. Like it's a how-to guide, which I really appreciate. But at the same time, it's also like you should be doing it this way because this is the only way that I think things should be done sort of situation. So it's not as bad as like Dr. Phil or like
I was thinking Dr. Phil, yeah.
It's not that way. It's definitely more of I've researched it and this is the only way that's the successful way of doing things. So it's backed by science, but in a sense, can you just
that scares me.
You stigmatize dating books now like no other. It's kind of like movies. You stigmatize romantic movies. It annoys the crap out of me. I watch a good movie and you're like, this is why it sucks, and this is why it sucks, and this is why it sucks. Just listen to my book report and stop saying shit.
I liked Everything Everywhere All at Once. That is my counter.
Okay, thank you.
And I watched it before it was Oscar nominated.
Oh, that's
okay.
good.
I will take my foot and my big heavy hiking boots off of your toes. I will stop stepping on them, and I will let you ask questions to me, and I will make disgruntled sounds, I'm sure.
Do you think that this is true? This is a statement that is asked of us at the beginning of the book in the introduction.
Yes.
You think it's true?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Moving on. So the background of the author, I'm just kidding. You fall in love. You don't think your way into it. It's a spontaneous chemical reaction, not a calculated decision. Do you think that love is a calculated decision or a chemical reaction?
Both.
Okay.
That's not the answer you wanted, but it's the
No,
answer
I'm just asking, can you expand on that? Because this is more of like, hey, what do you think about that? So I'll give you my answer back.
I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on arranged marriages, but I believe I've read some research that indicates that like arranged marriages have divorce rates pretty comparable, if not lower, than like marriages where people have a choice in things. And you can interpret that in like a society preventing people from breaking up if like their friends and family tell them to marry. But I think there's something to the idea that you can be paired with someone and find commonalities and develop a life together that makes you happy. I also think that we're biologically wired to respond in certain ways to certain stimulation, and some people are like just automatically attracted to other people, whether or not necessarily it's reciprocated. So I think there is like a little bit of column A and column B. I think love is one of those terms where like it's so misused because it can mean so many different things, and often we're just like it's this or it isn't. And I think it's a better answer to say love can be a variety of things and arise throughout through a combination of factors rather than just being one or the other.
Okay. Fair. I think that it's a mixture of both. So I think that it is like a chemical reaction, but I also think that it's a calculated decision at the same time. Because when you're falling in love, you have to make the decision that you're going to let your barriers down, let your walls down, let that person in. You're going to actively go out and like date this person. I don't think that you can fall in love in an instant. I think that it's both the chemical as well as the calculated decision coming into play at the same time.
Fair. What does the author say, Naomi?
The author does not answer this question. Apparently, the book is supposed to answer this question.
Does he answer it in the book or not?
I'm just kidding. Just let me finish. He does think that
joke's funnier then.
It is a spontaneous It's spontaneous chemical reaction. So when you fall in love, he thinks that it's a chemical reaction. It's not a decision.
All love is chemicals. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you, individual. Logan, was it?
Yes, Logan Yuri.
I'm going to find a photo of this individual so that you know how to like narrate these passages.
Okay, that's fair. Okay, go ahead. So, Logan Yuri, background on the author. Logan Yuri studied psychology at Harvard and has spent many years researching human behavior and relationships. This work has led the author to intentional love. His philosophy on creating healthy relationships. Intentional love asks you to view your love life as a series. Please keep that sneeze in. I'm gonna sneeze it. Intentional Love asks you to view your love life as a series of choices rather than accidents. This book is about being informed and purposeful, and acknowledging your bad habits, adjusting your dating techniques, and approaching crucial relationship conversations. So everything that I've already mentioned. So while writing this book is compiled of information that he gives because he's a dating guru. Like, people come to him for advice. He's like a matchmaker, things of that sort. He like meets people, he meets other people. He's like, oh, you guys are a good match. He like matches them together, or he coaches these people on how to get back out there, how to do the right things, how to step out of their comfort zones, how to find the person that they want to find. By doing this, he also collected information. He interviewed world-renowned experts about online dating, communication in the digital age, monogamy, empathy, and the secrets to a happy marriage. So from this, throughout the book, he references studies around the world. He references different ways that you can interpret this information, as well as he talks about his clients a lot. So throughout the book, he'll be like, oh, well, this person, Amy, that came to me a while back, 5 years ago, this is her story. Let me tell you her story, and then let me wrap it into the advice that experts give. But the main goal of this book is to help you overcome your blind spots that hold you back from finding love. So in this situation, he wants to break down those barriers, help you understand what's going wrong and where you're having blind spots, as well as helping you to overcome those blind spots and help you to find love. And then how to deal with things after you find love. Because it's not just princess finds the prince or princess finds another princess, or prince finds prince. We're being accepting here. This is an accepting podcast. And then everything's fine. He wants to go over everything from start to finish. He wants to break down your boundaries. He wants to walk you through how to find the right person. He wants you to find the right person. He wants you to go into, okay, how do you manage money? How do you deal with marriage? How do you deal with in-laws? All these different things. And then move into, okay, this is how you set up a successful relationship moving on. Any questions?
I'm a little scared. I'm open-minded, but I'm scared because we had two people whose books we've read who have talked about similar content. First was Dr. Phil, and Dr. Phil gave some patronizing but potentially helpful advice. And then we had John Gray, who did the Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus book. And that
Yeah.
was like, I've studied things. I got my PhD online, or it was like a correspondence thing where you like typed up essays and then sent them into his university of whatever fake college his weird cult sponsored. But yeah, like I think there's a lot of people who think they've cracked the code and figured out the secret, and I'm skeptical that anyone has. Like I can imagine there being like generalities that might help people, but I've been burned before, and I don't like getting burned.
I hope that we do this podcast and we read enough like dating advice books that we get to the end and we find the commonalities that actually work, if there are any commonalities.
Well, I mean, I think to a certain extent, one of the problems of this podcast is that like the things that people are attracted to and like the methods for picking up people and forming attachments are going to change over time, right? Like as people understand and like certain techniques for attraction or become more common, they're going to be less used and people are going to be more skeptical, and there's going to have to be new approaches developed. And so, we can look back from books in like 1990s and be like, oh, the culture was so gross and weird back then. And it's certainly possible that like the women at the time were like open and receptive to the approaches that John Gray is talking about. And similarly, I wonder with this, it's like, is this advice that applies to like all people of all generations, of all racial backgrounds, of all sexualities? Or is this something that like, okay, a decent sample size of like white people of college age, like gave me some answers. And this is, how I'm approaching life and my theory of everything. We'll see. We'll see. Again, like let's see what Logan has in mind. By the way, you've referred to Logan as a he, I believe, on several occasions, and I looked it up, and Logan is just 100% women presenting. I'm pretty sure Logan is a she.
Interesting. Okay. See, throughout this is where I get confused, because throughout the book, he refers to himself as a gay individual, and has referred to himself as a he. So, but I was confused.
Interesting, because I'm reading a review and it says, in her book, Not to Die Alone, she presents a science-based approach to finding true love. Huh.
But maybe they are trans.
I mean, this is certainly possible. Interesting. You're saying they refer to themselves as gay, but also there's pictures of a woman who might be Logan with her husband. Huh.
What I'm saying is they are trans. They were gay when they wrote this book, and now they are transitioning.
I think you're overthinking it.
I think I am too. But I also am fully aware that I've been reading this book and I've been trying to figure it out, because they never like give me a certain answer about like what they identify as. So yeah. So I'm going to give you a quick couple of definitions. We're going to move into like the process that Logan says is the cure-all for all love situations. It's each section that is brought out, and I'm just going to go over for the rest of this episode just section 1 on how to get ready.
Oh my god, how many parts is this going to be?
I don't want to talk about it.
Oh god, this is going to be worse than my book reports.
Intentional love is informed by both relationship science, what works for long-term relationships, and behavioral science, how to get us to follow through on our intentions. I will give you a process, and the process creates peace. Section 1, getting ready. So he starts with section 1, which is getting ready. How do you start to get out of your comfort zone? How do you help to move in, make yourself comfortable dating? If you stop dating for a while, if this is your first time dating, if you don't want to be in an arranged marriage and your parents are telling you to get married, things of that nature. Getting out there. So once you're comfortable with yourself, you got to get out there. You got to get on the apps. You got to get out on to a bar, a dating event, things of that nature.
Oh, such helpful advice. It turns out if you want to meet people, you have to go and interact with people. You can't just sit in your house and hope a handsome delivery man comes past.
I'm hoping that the second episode of this book report is just going to be section 2, getting out there. It's just going to be like, go outside. And that's the end of the episode.
Yeah. I'm making fun of this person, and they're probably going to have like really good advice. I'm going to feel really bad at the end of this episode, but like for the time being, I'm enjoying where I am.
So section 3 is getting serious. So you found the person that you want to spend more time with. How do you commit to making that either a long-term partnership or marriage or some sort of commitment in the future? And then the fourth section is going to be trying something different, which is you're reading this book because you want to find love. Perhaps you've dated a series of people who haven't brought out the best in you, who left you disappointed and alone. Or maybe you haven't been dating at all. School and work and family are all complexities of life that have gotten in the way, but you know deep down that you want to find someone. I'm here to help you get to the next step. I want you to think of yourself as my dating coach client. Here, my ask of you is commit to doing the exercises. They really work, and allow me the chance to change your mind. You've been doing things your way your entire life. Why not try something different? A lasting, loving relationship may very well be waiting for you on the other end.
Does Logan believe everyone would be happier with a partner?
You know, I really get some vibes that say yes to that question and some vibes that say no. I think that throughout reading this book, Logan's just looking for the client that wants to be in a relationship. They're not looking to get people into their, like, out of their asexual, like, being and
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I think it's just Logan thrives on helping people be their full potential, essentially, in the dating world.
It's interesting because if you're running like a relationship and dating service, you'd think that your primary clients would be maybe more desperate than the average person. So I have to wonder if this is advice aimed at people who like have had serious difficulties dating. And it may, again, not be applicable to people who just like have casually met someone and are like, okay, cool. Like, let's see where this goes.
It's interesting because throughout this like book, Logan mentions a lot of clients that they have, in the sense of like sometimes they're friends and sometimes they're people that have hired Logan to do the matchmaking for them. And so all of them come from different backgrounds. So one of them, which I appreciate because it's not just like, oh, this woman had a series of bad relationships and she's ready to stop dating toxic men, you know, like the typical like Steve Harvey, Dr. Phil shit. Some of them are like, oh, well, I've just never dated in the past. I've never had time for it because I was in school. Some of them were like, did have that typical, I have always been in toxic relationships. I'm trying to change that cycle. And then some of them are like, I'm just not comfortable dating because of like trauma that I have. Like there's all different sorts of situations that Logan encounters and then tells us about.
Okay.
So the first thing that Logan tries to help us understand is why dating is so hard these days. And we've talked about it extensively on this podcast. We talked about why people don't want to get married, why people don't want to have kids, why people aren't dating, why people aren't having casual sex anymore. We talked about it all. But Logan tries to explain it in a lot of different ways that I don't think we fully explored yet. So a couple of ways that Logan describes why dating is so hard is we define our own identities. So a lot of this is mainly just dating apps. So when we go on a dating app, we put ourselves in boxes, if that makes sense. So we're like, okay, I am bisexual. I am a woman. I am looking for a man. I am, I don't date conservatives, like that kind of thing. You put yourself in a box. And so you're not seeing everything that is possible to see. You're not seeing the entire world at your fingertips, which you think that you are seeing when you put yourself in a box and you're just checking off the what do I want to see when you're setting up your dating app, if that makes sense. So,
I disagree with this. So I have two issues. The first is I don't think it's necessarily people doing that. I think it's requirements of the dating apps where it's you have to fill out like the bare minimum. And, you know, you have your political choices and your height and your age and your weight and gender. Yeah, all that. So I do think like the structure of dating apps incentivizes people to form these identities. But second, I don't know if this is different than like the past. I don't know if this is any different than like people in the 1910s doing these like meet and greets where like you couldn't show up at someone's house to like be entertained by them if you weren't of the same social class. Like obviously someone who is like Indian would not be able to show up to like a nice white respectable white woman's house and like be greeted with like candor and respect. Like clearly there's always been this like self-selection process and this like insular group identity process for dating. And I don't know if it's a new phenomenon. And why that's important is it's not an explanation for why people are dating less in the modern era, right? It would seem to be a condition that maybe is easier to make explicit, but not necessarily different than how people have implicitly done dating before.
We are talking about why it's hard. We're not talking about why people aren't dating. We're talking about why it's hard to find the person that you want to spend more time with. So in saying this, Logan is blaming it on the dating apps for putting you in these boxes by saying, oh, I only want to date this, this, and this, and this, rather than I want to see everyone on this app.
Sure. I guess my question is, when he says, dating is difficult in the modern era, is that supposed to be different from the past, or has this always been a condition of dating?
This is current time. We're not talking about the past. We're not talking about the future. We're talking about current time.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're talking about right now with all these Hinge, Tinder, Bumble, like Grindr, all these dating apps out there. We are talking about what the issues are right now and why it's hard right now. So in 20 years, you can't read this book and look for it for good advice on everything. You're looking to this book for good advice right now.
I've been burned before, Naomi.
The second thing that Logan lists, why dating is so hard, is that there are thousands of options at your fingertips. Now, we can swipe through hundreds of potential partners in a single sitting, but there's a downside to this seemingly infinite options. Psychologists, including Barry Schwartz, professor emeritus at Swarthmore, which I didn't even know was a school, has shown that while people crave choice, too many options can make you feel less happy and more doubtful of your decisions. They call this the paradox of choice. So they go on to talk about the paradox of choice, and essentially you just have analysis paralysis, which I love the rhyme, first of all, but when you get to the point where you're seeing so many people, you're swiping based off of just looks at that point. You're not even going through the profiles. And I've been to that. I've been up that mountain. I've looked at all these people and I'm like, I'm so exhausted from swiping. I just want to find someone to like spend time with. I'm just going off of looks. I'm not even looking through their profile because I'm just so exhausted by it. I'm so exhausted with looking at these profiles and trying to find someone and messaging them back and trying to figure out dates of when we can get together and trying to get to know them, all while still swiping. The third thing that Logan mentions as why dating is so hard these days is uncomfortable making decisions when we can't research our way to the right answer. So usually people these days can be like, hey, Google, flip a coin, or hey, Google, can you tell me the answer to this question, or hey, Siri, or hey, Alexa, or whatever. But in situations like this, you can't ask one of those devices. You can't Google, hey, should I go out with this guy? If you're getting an itchy feeling, or you're not totally comfortable with the situation, or you just don't know. The next thing is social media leads us to believe that everyone is in healthier, happier relationships. So the vast majority of the time, we go online, we go on Facebook, we go on Instagram, we go on Snapchat, and we see these pictures, we see these single snapshots of relationships, and we're like, oh my God, I want one of those. You know what I mean? It's like when you see a cute dog, and you're like, I want that. And you look at it and you're like, I want that situation. But you don't understand that there's so many things that are going on behind the scenes that you don't understand. This person could be in an abusive relationship with their partner. This person could have just gotten in a fight and they're like, oh, let's prove to the world that we're actually happy in our relationship. This generation has talked extensively about why social media is just disturbing to us as consumers of the media that we're seeing.
So why bring that up? Is it saying that there's unrealistic expectations for relationships being set?
It's that, as well as you try to get yourself out of the comfort zone of, oh, I am happy, I'm healthy on my own, rather than it gets you from that into, I want a relationship, even if it's not exactly what fits into your timeline, what fits into what's comfortable with you. You're seeking for something that you can't tangibly get, and you can't, you're not ready for. Does that make sense? So like if you aren't comfortable with a situation, but you're seeing your best friend or your friends from high school getting married or something, you're like, oh, I want that, but you don't have emotional intelligence, you don't have the time, you don't have the therapy that's needed to go through like dating, which I'm not saying therapy is needed in dating, but sometimes it's helpful in situations. It leads you to get into relationships that you're not ready for and cause further damage.
Yeah, I see what they're saying, but I can also see that there's a lot of like people on social media talking about all the merits of being single recently. Like,
Yeah.
maybe it's not the most popular thing, but I think it can go both ways, where you can both have like aspirational relationship content as well as like aspirational single content.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if one would be more persuasive than the other. I think there's probably more of the aspirational relationship content, but I think there's certainly a subsect of social media that is growing in popularity, which is, hey, it's okay to be single and you can have lots of fun and disposable income and you can fart and you don't have to wear pants in your house. It's great.
I love that that's what you automatically jump to.
I'm just saying, like, there are certain expectations placed upon me by a partner that I have very little control over. And, my partner may be great and all, but sometimes I just want to walk around without pants in the house and fart with impunity.
Can't you just do that anyways, just out of their like earshot?
It's a small house, Naomi. We're starving millennials. You know how it is.
Starving. Okay. So the next thing is that a lot of us just don't have good relationship models. Can you, Joel, I'm asking this to you. Can you think of a single like relationship that you can be like, wow, I really look up to that couple right here? And you can be completely honest. Don't feel like you're putting anyone's feelings into it. But what relationship, romantic relationship, marriage, partnership do you look up to? And say,
Gomez
wow.
and Morticia Adams from the Adams family.
The Adams. So is that the new version or the old version?
They're all pretty good.
Okay.
I don't know. We have some family friends, one of whom is very active in the community, and the other whom, their partner, who is a very prominent gardener in the local desert gardening community. Do you know who I'm talking about? Am I being vague enough?
Yeah.
I don't want you to have to edit too much by putting in like bleeps. Yeah, I don't know. They seem pretty happy and comfortable, and to my knowledge, they have not had any like significant relationship issues over the years.
Yeah, but how well do you know these people that you're like, oh yeah, I can like attest to that and say
How well do we know anyone, Naomi? I don't know, man. There's a whole side that's kept secret from the public and from our friends. There's rich inner worlds despite relationship status that may go over the heads of those around you.
Remember when we at the beginning where you were like, I'm just gonna put my hiking boot in my big mouth. Okay, but what I'm trying to say is that's one relationship. Can you think of any others?
Sure.
Oh my God.
For sake of argument, I can think of many more examples of bad or failed relationships than I can think of positive ones off the top of my head.
Exactly. So we don't have relationship models to look up to. And all these dating books that Joel and I have read recently just give us awful dating advice. And then we move forward and we have these awful cycles of not understanding what is a good relationship because we don't think that we can make our own ideals of a good relationship. We think that we have to look up to someone. And yes, that is true. Sometimes you do want to have a good relationship model. You do want to, look up to someone and be like, wow, I want to be more like that couple. But at the same time, you don't know unless you've lived with that couple and you've been inside their minds what exactly is going on. You need to figure out what you want in your relationship to make it happy, healthy, successful, and full of growth.
Okay, I can buy that, but also I'm like, is the author saying you need to have the inner secrets that people don't share, and by doing research I've figured out what those inner secrets are of successful couples? Or are they saying most people aren't looking for relationships because they have such terrible models they don't think relationships are worth pursuing, and I need to write a book convincing them that relationships are worth pursuing?
None of this has to do with the author and what they're trying to write about. It's just facts that are being written out. This list is why is dating so hard these days? It's kind of fulfilling the thought process of, okay, why is dating so hard? I picked up this book. This is just kind of reinforced
but there's a
rhetorical
use of bringing this up in the book, and I'm wondering what the purpose is. I mean, I'm going to do my own book report on this book after you do your book report on this book, and I'll have answered all of my questions. Be like, remember when I was being really snooty? Well, it turns out.
So much for mansplaining. How to give a book report, you fucker.
How to give a book report, you fucker, should be the name of this section. That would be very good.
The next thing is we're bombarded with messages that we need to get this decision right. So the vast majority of the time we grow up and we're like, marriage is a one-time thing. Did you ever get that message growing up, Joel? Because I know I sure did.
No.
You didn't?
Speaking of failed relationships, we have so many people in our family who have been like divorced and remarried multiple times.
But I'm talking about specifically from the people that were helping raise us, that were raising us. You know what I mean?
No. I don't think I ever got the perception that divorce is immoral or wrong. I'm not trying to be difficult, but it was like sometimes people aren't compatible, and that's like a thing.
That it's not immoral or wrong. What I'm trying to say is, like, when you make this decision, it's a big decision and you should really think about it a lot, sort of thing.
No, I didn't. Like, our parents have been like have given so few details about like how they met. It's very much like they met at a IHOP and they fell in love immediately and they then decided to get married that day. Like that's pretty much the narrative. There's no explanation of the process or like the underlying thinking. It was just it was like one of those cartoons where like you see the girl and your heart like goes boing boing boing, you know, popping out of your chest. I don't
that I got out of that story was, 1, they got married really fast, and 2, dad cannot keep secrets.
Yeah. But like, you see what my point is. Like, we did not receive this like life lesson that a lot of thought and time and energy was put into the proposal and me thinking about like how we would live together.
I was always told
how the toilet paper should go on the toilet paper rack.
See, it's interesting because I was always told that like this was a major decision. You think about it again, then you think about it again.
That's messed up. Yeah,
that's what
which of our parents is telling you that? They're like, marriage is hard. Oh, hard. Let me tell you.
We obviously grew up in 2 different households.
Clearly. Our parents did start drinking a lot more after I left the house. Like, I'm not joking. Like, they would just like casually imbibe like moonshine. And I have to wonder if maybe
all of this out. Mom's gonna get on me. She's gonna be like, "Why did you cut this out of the podcast?"
Let's just bleep over every time we say our parents, and then the people will be like, "Who are they talking about? Were they raised by wolves or something?"
Yeah, exactly. They'll be like wolves that drink moonshine.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even want to imply like our parents are alcoholics. That is like not at all the case. Like, our parents take like a single shot or out for the evening. I just think like maybe they were more willing to have like difficult conversations with you after I moved out. They were like, now that Joel's gone, the family secrets can come out.
That's not true. You got more family secrets before I moved out than I got before I moved out.
I don't know where the Guy family gold is buried.
I don't either. I think Max is the only one that knows that.
Oh, okay. Listeners, if you are looking for the Guy family gold, please torture our brother, Max.
So we've gone over why dating is so hard in the modern day.
Because Joel won't stop pestering his sister. That's why it's...
Yeah. This is how you give a book report, you fucker. Can I ask you a follow-up question to the original question about chemical balances and things like that?
Go for it.
Relationships are built and not discovered. Do you think this is true?
Yes.
Okay. I also think this is true. I've had long, extensive conversations about this outside of this book. I'm not just talking to the book, having conversation about this. I think in a million ways that they are built and not just discovered. You can't walk into a room and say, I love this person, and it's all going to work out. You can't just put in the minimum amount of effort and it's going to work out. Some cases it does, but that's very, very rare. that
I think the good example of the exception to the rule is like transactional relationships where like each party is clearly getting something out of the other person and they're under no illusions about what that is. So I'm thinking like Hugh Hefner and like one of his 18-year-old wives or whatever.
That's only there for the clothing allowance.
Yeah, like it doesn't matter if they disagree over like diet and finances and like, you know, where the toilet paper roll goes and its orientation and all of that. Like she's pretty and makes him look like he's super attractive and masculine, and he's going to give her money when he dies. Like it's very clear like what their roles are. And I think most relationships aren't structured like that. I think for the most part there is not a clear like me hot, you financially provide. I think it's much more nuanced and complicated, and that's like why you have to build. You have to discover like what your partner cares about and how you can appeal to that, how you can like meet their needs. And if you care about them, you have to like figure out the little things that make their heart go pitter patter, like bringing them home, you know, flowers once a month, or, you know, treating them to, you know, an ice cream you whipped up at home, or like taking them to the amusement park.
Would you call Hugh Hefner's relationship successful, Joel?
I'm not even, no, well, I mean, both parties probably got what they wanted.
That's
like, I don't
fair.
know, like, how we're supposed to measure relationships. Were they both happy? That's not a question I can easily answer.
You heard it here first. Joel thinks that Hugh Hefner's relationships were successful. I'm just going to keep misquoting you until the end of time.
That's fair.
It's okay. You do it to me all the time.
I hate women. Naomi got it.
Chapter 2, the 3 dating tendencies. So I'm just going to go over two quick things in this chapter. Our dating blind spots. Dating blind spots are patterns of behavior that hold us back from finding love, but which we can't identify on our own. So this is a situation this is like a thing that I think I have an issue with in this book. This is the first issue. Because I think that you can date enough that you figure out your dating blind spots. Would you agree with that?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I think in the sense that you can identify over time the things that have made your relationship more or less successful, I think you can do that. I think it's much harder for people to actually act on that information. And I really think it takes like an outside observer to like make the connection for you. Like you might be like
making those connections for you. Like who should be that outside observer?
That's a good question, whether it's, you know, friends or family. I think, you know, this was one of the problems Dr. Phil had, because he's like, sit down and like envision all of your past relationships and figure out what went wrong without doing the obvious thing and like asking people in your life like what you thought the strengths and weaknesses in my prior relationships were, what my personal strengths and weaknesses are. I think a lot of people are aware of like mistakes and pitfalls they do, but don't know how to like stop doing it. Like a lot of people have addictive behavior. A lot of people have like bad decision making.
Okay.
And sometimes it just takes someone like, hey, you always go for biker boys and like biker boys don't treat you right. Like maybe stop dating biker boys. I do think there's something to like the tough love talk that a lot of movies kind of do, where it's like, you know what your problem is? I think that's helpful for people. I think it's really, it's not always a good thing. I think sometimes people use that speech to be an asshole, but like, I think it can be helpful to sort of see the outside perspective of like, where am I going wrong? Where could I be more successful? What do other people in my life think I should be doing?
Okay, I would agree with that, but I think that there's a certain amount of like awareness that you have once you've dated a few people and you understand, okay, this is the cycle that I'm in, if you're in a cycle, or this is the issue that I'm having consistently, this is why my relationships are like breaking up. And I feel like it's not always true, it's not always the case, but I feel like in some cases you can identify what those dating blind spots are.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So Logan identifies these dating blind spots and categorizes them in 3 ways, which I don't necessarily agree with. I don't think that your dating blind spots can be categorized in these 3 ways. Logan identifies these dating tendencies as the romanticizer. You're either a romanticizer, a maximizer, or a hesitator. And I'm about to define all 3. Don't you worry. So he asks you to take a short quiz. They ask you to take a short quiz in the book, which we don't have time for. You can't take the quiz. We'll put it online. Don't worry. Will we put it online? That's the question. So the romanticizer. You want the soulmate, the happily ever after, the whole fairy tale. You love love. You believe you are single because you haven't met the right person yet. Your motto, it'll happen when it's meant to happen. The maximizer, you love doing research, exploring all your options, turning over every stone until you're confident you found the right one. You make decisions carefully, and you want to be 100% certain about something before you make your choice. Your motto, why settle? The hesitator, you don't think you're ready for dating because you're not the person you want to be yet. You hold yourself to a high standard. You want to feel completely ready when you start a new project. The same goes for dating. Your motto, I'll wait until I'm a catch. See, I have an issue with categorizing yourself this way because one, it doesn't go over all your blind spots, and two, when I took the quiz, I was equally all three. So, what does that say about me?
Lynn, you'd better look out. Remind me, I'm sorry, these three are supposed to be
your dating tendencies, so like your dating blind spots.
Yeah, that seems very broad and non-inclusive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Logan goes on to like continue to describe these three categories. The romanticizer has unrealistic expectations about relationships, the maximizer has unrealistic expectations about the partner, and the hesitator has unrealistic expectations of themselves. So I just don't understand how you can like be any of these things.
Well, I'm also wondering like what you can have been in a series of relationships where the other person broke up with you. And you wouldn't fit in any of these categories, but you would have a blind spot for not being able to identify people who like tend to break up with you. Yeah. And like, I know women, a lot of women, this is probably more common in women than it is for men, have this problem where like they use sex as a way of like getting to a man's heart. And the man is just like, oh man, free sex. And like they go on a couple of dates and then, you know, he drops her. And I think
sex.
One more time.
What is not free sex? You said, oh, free sex.
Accessible, easily accessible sex. Okay. But yeah, like in that case, it's like the person is looking for a relationship. The guy is looking for like easy sex. I don't really think they're romanticizing the individual. They're romanticizing the idea of romance. They're like, if this person spends time with me, if we have enough sex, we're going to fall in love. I don't know if that fits in any of those three categories. I guess my bigger point is just like people can break up with you. And I don't know if that's necessarily your fault for not being able to identify that ahead of time. But if it is, that would fit into a fourth category that isn't discussed here.
I feel like that situation is a romanticizer situation.
Because you can't see past, well, okay, but there are partners who like don't exhibit bad behavior but still do bad things, right? Like it's not even romanticizing them. They just out of nowhere are like, oh yeah, it turns out it's a shitty person who's just really good at hiding it. And it wouldn't be you romanticizing them. It would be like them being really manipulative.
I feel like you're overthinking the romanticizer because the romanticizer I feel like is like you only see like flags. You don't see red flags because you have your rose-colored glasses on. You're like, oh, that's not a red flag since I have my rose-colored glasses on. That's just the flag.
I guess. I mean, maybe this happens less frequently than I'm assuming, but I think that there's a lot of people who are good at hiding their true selves, and it takes quite a while of dating them before that comes out.
Okay, so you're trying to say that the people that I'm sorry, I'm still confused on what you're trying to say. What the bigger picture is. You're trying to say that no one can be identified as these until they show their true selves?
No, I'm just saying there's more categories than these. And the example I was giving was there are times when people have made the mistake of trusting their partner too much. It's not romanticizing them. It's like their partner hides things and it's really, really good and manipulative at that. And that seems to me to be a pretty common situation based off like anecdotes we've shared on this podcast and like things I've read in media, but maybe I'm just too much of a pessimist.
Okay.
My point is if Logan has studied thousands of relationships and done all this research, it seems that would be an archetype that might come up on occasion. It just seems weird to exclude.
Okay. So Logan, after defining these, gives like lots of examples of situations in which they like are used. So Logan uses the soulmate mindset, which is defined by psychologist Renee Franuk, which I'm so sorry if I just butchered your name. And people that have the soulmate mindset, it's a belief that the relationship satisfaction comes from finding the right person, rather than the opposite, which is the workout mindset, which is the belief that relationship success derives from putting in effort. So first, it affects the way you approach a partner when you have the soulmate mindset, and then it affects the mindset influences whom you're willing to go out with, and then it's just basically like a tunnel effect. So since romanticizers are a tunnel effect, an avalanche effect, that's a better way of saying it. Since romanticizers are confident they know what their future partner will look like, when they meet someone who doesn't match their image, they won't give the person a chance. They end up missing out on their potential matches. When they start dating someone they believe is the one, their sky-high expectations can propel the relationship forward. But when the couple hits an inevitable obstacle, say for instance a particularly heated fight, they give up on the relationship rather than trying to overcome it. So Logan's trying to push the idea that romanticizers are seeking perfection. They seek that sense of, oh, if it isn't completely right, you need to leave. And every relationship has fights. That's just inevitable. So in this situation, when you have that soulmate effect of the belief that the relationship satisfaction comes from finding the right person, they have found the right person, but it's the wrong person when they get to that like inevitable fight. In comparison, those with the work it out mindset believe that relationships take effort, that love is an action you take, not something that happens to you. People with the work it out mindset tend to fare better in relationships because they stumble, they put in the work needed to get the relationship back on track rather than giving up. So it gives advice on, if you're a romanticizer, what you should do in a situation like this, and like how to move forward in this mindset and either change it or how to twist it in such a way that you will move it into a work it out method.
I mean, maybe she gets into this, but it seems strange to me where it's like romanticizers give up on relationships after a single fight, and people with the work it out perspective are like, a single fight won't define a relationship, we're gonna like struggle. But obviously there's situations where like people are fighting over something that's relatively innocuous, and they shouldn't fight over things that are relatively innocuous. They should work through it. And there's situations where sometimes there's a fight that comes up and it is like a relationship deal breaker. So like, how do people not fall into the trap where it's like, I'm a work it out person, I'm going to tolerate like serious abuse? How do you avoid that? If like,
that's very fair.
The better perspective that she says is, oh, you should try to like always find a solution and work together with your partner.
That's very fair. So I am I'm a victim of the work it out method. I stayed in a relationship way too long. We all know that. We've been there. We've talked about it. Something that I needed to understand, that was one of my dating blind spots, and I think that's what this is sort of rolling towards, is you need to have a perfect balance of the work it out method as well as the soulmate mindset. So you do need to understand, yes, that there's situations where you can work it out, and then there's situations that are deal breakers, and there needs to be a balance of the both of them. And it's not always a work it out, and it's not always a soulmate. There needs to be a balance of the two.
Yeah,
a great example
that seems fair.
A great example that Logan gives is the Disney fantasy. So the soulmate mindset of, oh, you're supposed to find the right person, you're going to lock eyes, you're going to have a great life together, and there's no issues. But what the Disney fantasy doesn't give us is what happens after the glass slipper goes on, they go off and get married. What happens after the wedding? What if there's infertility issues? What if IVF doesn't work? What if they don't like each other's in-laws? Like, all these different things happen that aren't talked about. And so in this, Logan kind of talks about that perfect balance of, okay, you need to, yes, have that soulmate mindset of, I'm finding the right person, and nothing less will do, but also have the work it out mindset where you need to figure out what's going to happen after you find that person and how you're going to deal with the situations after you found that person.
Yeah, I don't know. This seems very similar to the Dr. Phil advice, which was like, don't do too much of this, but also don't do too much of this. A
Because I don't
balance
think
of
that
these
Dr.
two.
Phil had any actual advice. It was just like, I'm going to give you the perfect median that won't get me in trouble, but also won't get you in trouble, hopefully.
Yeah. But I guess to me, the better advice is not find a median between the two. It's teach people what are unrealistic expectations of relationships to avoid kind of the romanticizer issue, and also teach people what are arguments they can work through with their spouse and what are deal breakers, right? Like if your spouse says, hey, I don't like doing dishes, I don't want to ever do dishes, that's probably something you can work out with your spouse, right? Like that's probably a chore that you can like take over and like handle, or like you can be
Yeah.
like, hey, I'll do dishes and you do X, Y, and Z, or you can like talk through them, like why they don't like doing dishes, and see if like maybe it's because the stuff gets all gross after it's been sitting, so maybe they should do it like as you're cooking. I don't know, like that seems like something you can work out. But if your
Yeah.
like spouse starts talking about like how all women who are sexually assaulted deserve it, and like how they're all sluts and all of that, that seems to be like a much bigger issue. And like
Yeah.
being able to identify which of those problems is addressable and which of those is like, do not pass go, do not collect $200, go to your parents' house right now, seems to be the helpful thing. And
Well,
that's what our dating book should address.
I think that I think that our dating book should also address, before you start dating, you should come up, either write it down or come up with a list in your mind of things that are deal breakers and things that you can't work through in
Oh
relationships.
no, that's what Dr. Phil said.
Do we not remember the conversation at the beginning of the book where I said if we ever write a dating book together, we should compile all the information we got from all the dating books that we read and then see what actually works?
Yeah, but like, I don't want any citations in our book to be like, as Dr. Phil once said.
Dude, you can quote me. I will become a doctor of psychology just for this reason.
Excellent. That's the best reason to become a doctor. So you and your brother can write a shitty relationships book
And
that
don't
has to
have
be
to quote Dr.
self-published and don't have to quote Dr. Phil.
So, moving into chapter 4, Logan is comparing the maximizers versus satisfiers. So, throughout this book, there's I'm just gonna read the book. I'm not even gonna try to explain it. Stephen is a maximizer. Maximizers obsess over making the best possible decision. American economist, political scientist, and cognitive psychologist Herbert A. Simon first described this personality profile in a 1956 paper. According to Simon, maximizers are a special type of perfectionists. They're compelled to explore every possible option before they feel like they can choose. Yet this compulsion becomes daunting and ultimately unfeasible when they face a vast number of possibilities. On the other end of the spectrum of satisfiers are satisfiers, a portmanteau of satisfy and suffice. They have standards, but they aren't overly concerned that they might make something better out there. They know their criteria and they hunt until they find the good enough option. It's not that they settle, they're simply fine making a decision once they've gathered some evidence and identified satisfactory options. So, maximizers obsess over decision making. They trust that careful analysis will ultimately make their life better, but that's not true. Not only are satisfies I can't speak right now. Satisfiers able to make good decisions, they tend to wind up happier about them. That's because it's worth repeating. Satisficing. Am I saying this word wrong? SATISFI.
It's satisfying. It's an economic term. It's like the art of finding a solution that most appeals to all of your needs.
Okay, so I was just wrong. I was just reading too fast.
I guess. Like I think satisfying works in most cases too.
I don't think it does, because satisfying, you would be satisfying other people. You would be like appeasing other people.
You can satisfy yourself.
Okay, this is not a dirty podcast, Joel.
Keep going.
Satisficing is not about settling. Satisficers may not may have very high standards and stop only after those standards have been met. The difference is, once they stop, they don't worry about what else is out there. Maximizers, on the other hand, may find an option that meets their standards, so they feel compelled to explore all possibilities. What are you about to say, Joel? You have a face that you need to say something.
No,
Okay,
I'm good. I was just practicing my Dwayne The Rock Johnson like eyebrow tilt.
Okay, good shit. Do you know that 21 Pilots, one of the singers in 21 Pilots and Debbie Ryan, they're married. They have a bust of Dwayne The Rock Johnson in their home. That was information you could have lived without. I see that now.
This isn't a Black Adam fan podcast.
Imagine you're a maximizer who's sick of spending money on your morning coffees. You spend hours conducting research into a home espresso maker. You read the Amazon reviews and study the product comparison websites like Wirecutter. You select Wirecutter's #1 pick, the Elite Breville Brambino Plus. As soon as it arrives, you notice it doesn't fit as easily into your kitchen as you thought it would. You wonder if you should have gotten a smaller one. Just as the review warns, it doesn't capture the brightness of your coffee bean. As your cup brews, you stew and regret not going with a different option. Meanwhile, your Satisficer friend is also in the market for an espresso maker. She goes to the mall, pops into an espresso store, tells the employee what she's looking for, and walks out with a reasonably priced machine. She tells you how much she adores the process of making her daily latte, from selecting the fun-colored pods to steaming her milk. In this scenario, you selected the best espresso maker machine available. Several websites compared your machine to hers, and yours won. But who feels better about their decision? The Satisficer reports feeling happier with their choice, even when they find an objectively worse option. I mean, come on, your friend's Nespresso maker doesn't even make the Wirecutter's top picks. That's because the maximizers constantly second-guess themselves. They suffer doubt doubly. First, in the agony leading up to the decision, and again every time they worry they've made the wrong one. Psychologist and the Paradox of Choice author Barry Schwartz explains what separates maximizers and satisfiers is not the quality of their decision, it's how these decisions make them feel. Maximizers make good decisions and end up feeling bad about them. Satisficers make good decisions and end up feeling good. What's your goal? To have the world's best coffee machine or to be happy? If it's happiness you're after, it's the subjective experience, not the objective result, that really matters. While the quality of coffee is important, how we feel about the coffee is paramount. I have an issue with this because I'm thinking, okay, I should be a satisficer. I shouldn't be a maximizer. But then at the end of it, I'm like questioning, I shouldn't be a satisficer because if I'm happier with a dull result, then I'm not actually happier in the end. I'm just settling.
Well, I'm a little confused. Maybe I'm like breaking the categories down further, and this would fall into one of them. But like Logan is describing an individual who does a lot of research on a product to find something that meets all of their individual tastes and purchases that thing and has like regret afterwards. And then there's the individual who like does minimal research, finds something that meets like the bare minimum of their specifications and like walks out. And maybe this is similar, but I'm also thinking there's a person who's kind of me who like reads a bunch of reviews and other people's descriptions of the product online in order to find a solution that like meets their needs. And in the world of dating, there seems to be that too, where there's like the person looking for the ideal fit, the person looking for like a fit that is going to make them happy. And then there's also the person who like, whether implicitly or explicitly, is making a decision based off of what other people think is attractive and good. Like you'll see a lot of that in like the incel community where it's like, they're not even looking for a solution that would make them happy. They're not even looking for like some woman that like shares their interests. They're looking for like the platonic Barbie or whatever. They're looking for like some slutty hot woman that every other man is going to find attractive. And so I feel that's a separate category entirely. And I think it's more common than like I'm making it out to be, because I think a lot of people in the world of dating select partners or potential dates, not based off of what will necessarily make them happy, but off of like what other people will think is attractive and cool and good. Like, I don't want to necessarily find someone who's going to share my interests in D&D. I want to find someone who like is going to make my friends go, "Oh, you lucked out, dude. You did all right with that pick." Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
In the same way, like also like with relationships, we've talked about family before, and like a lot of people only choose partners who might get along with their parents. Yes. And in that case, it's not like, maybe that is like satisfying your personal preference of not causing conflict with family, but it also seems heavily influenced by the perceptions and desires of other people around you. Not something that maximizes all of your needs, nor something that meets the minimum amount.
I think you're overthinking this to the utmost extent.
I'm writing my own dating book, and whatever flaws in this argument I can find, I'm using and expanding upon.
Well, on that note, we haven't gotten through the first section, but I would like to close this episode by explaining that Joel sucks at listening to my book reports, and he needs to do his own book reports from now on to satisfy his own needs, because he's a maximizer who's never satisfied with his decisions.
Damn, it's true. No, I'm looking for the consensus view. I know the audience like wants me to be antagonistic towards you, and so that's what I'm appealing to.
Okay, well, if that's what our reviews say, we're going to do a poll on our Patreon, and the Patreon's just going to be like, you should fight more on the podcast.
I think that is the content people subscribe for. You know, the two people who are subscribed right now.
Yeah.
Naomi, I appreciate you putting this together. I'm sorry I'm being vindictive. I genuinely think there's something to like the art of trying to identify like the behavioral patterns people fall into and the mistakes they make. But so far, this approach seems a little too simplistic. And I guess my criticisms with it are not like personal attacks against the author. It's more of like, we can do better, right? We can write a better book than this.
I just don't think that you have like really seen like, I think we've just hit like the skin of it. We haven't gotten down deep yet, and I think that we've just gotten through. Yeah, exactly. We haven't gotten through all the definitions. And so now that we're through the definitions, we can actually get into like experiences, examples, advice, things of that nature, and we're not just stuck on Joel's bitchiness.
Well, thank you again for joining us for another round of This Is How You Do a Book Report, you fucker. It's a new recurring segment we'll return to multiple times. Parents, please don't write us out of our will for disclosing all of your dirty secrets and alluding to the existence of the Guy family gold. For our listeners, it's not actually gold, it's iridium. It's much more valuable. Still don't go looking for it. Our brother may or may not know the location. I would not I would not base your entire life around finding him and torturing him to reveal the secrets. I don't know where I'm going with this.
They can make a whole movie out of that. Just that storyline.
They're looking for a Gregory Guy who doesn't exist.
Yes.
They're like, they keep alluding to this Gregory Guy who lives in San Francisco. There's no one in the public records. That's crazy.
Yeah, so wild.
Yeah.
Well, Joel, I hope I'm not saying this to you. I'm saying this to the crowd, the audience. We hope you have a great week. Wear a condom. Remember that if you get tested, get everything swabbed. Don't just do a urine test.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Please subscribe to our Patreon. Please support trans everything. It's a scary world right now. Trans and abortion rights funds really need your support. They're people who are suffering, and we would like to do our best to use our platform to prevent that from continuing. Enjoy your week. Wear that condom. Don't get swabbed.
Oh my God, Joel, just tell them to get swabbed.
Get swabbed because Naomi said so.
No, here's a little sexual education. If you go in and you get tested for just gonorrhea and chlamydia, and you just do a urine test, your urine can come back negative for both gonorrhea and chlamydia. But you can still have gonorrhea and chlamydia in either your rectum or in your throat, or both. And it wouldn't show up on a test unless you got swabbed. So go get swabbed, ladies and gentlemen.
Healthcare is fun. Have someone take samples from your butt, I guess. That's
healthcare should be more accessible. Peace out. Have a good week.
Smell you later.